All right, good evening. My name is Catherine. I work with SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 64 affordable rental units that are being offered at Station 316 Apartments in Woburn. So the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the available units. I'll also cover the application and lottery processes and what to expect after the lottery itself. So if you have any questions during this session, you can either type them into the chat on Zoom, or you can unmute yourself during the presentation. When you came into the meeting, you were automatically muted just to minimize any outside noise. So after this session, if you have any questions, or if you're watching this after the fact, because this is a live session that will be posted to our YouTube channel afterwards, you can contact SEB Housing at info@sebhousing.com if you have any questions that you don't think of tonight. So just for some background information on who we are. So as you can see, if you've joined by your computer, I have some slides up here. So SEB Housing, we're an off-site affordable housing consulting group. So we're not the on-site management team for the building. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units, to conduct this information session, and collect and review applications to determine each applicant's eligibility for the affordable housing program. In the initial phases of this application process, we're going to be your main contact rather than the management office at Station 316. But then later down later in this process, you will be in touch with the leasing office at Station 316 for some other, your lease. Hold on one second here. You'll be in touch with the leasing office further down the line to complete your lease screening and final program screening. So there's a few steps in the process, the lottery being the first. You would need to apply for this lottery by submitting an application, and you'll be in touch with SEB Housing during that time. Then later on in the process, you'll be meeting with the leasing office to do your lease eligibility screening, which usually includes, credit check, history check, rental history check, that sort of thing. And then after your lease eligibility, you'll be able to then complete your program certification, which is the point in the process where you would need to submit your income, asset, and tax documentation. So in order to apply for this lottery, you don't need to submit any pay stubs or any supporting documentation. You're just going to be self-reporting on your application what your income is and all of that. And then later on in the process, if you're one of the top households, you will be asked to submit that supporting information afterwards. So if you haven't already, you can check out our website too. So sebhousing.com, there is a affordable housing opportunities page. And if you select I want to rent, there is a page specific to Station 316 Apartments. So you'd click on that, and then you'd be taken to a page that has some more information about the property. There's also a downloadable version of the application on our website, as well as a downloadable version of the information packet. A lot of the information that I'm going to be going over during this session is in the information packet. And then there's also a link to the application, the online application. So it's on your screen right now too. It's a jot form link. And we do encourage you, if you're able to complete the application online. It will be the quickest way for you to apply and ensure that your application is received right away. Once you submit that online application, you'll instantaneously receive a confirmation email. That is just an auto email that is going to be confirming that your application was submitted and received. But then later on, once your application has actually been reviewed by someone at SEB Housing, you'll hear from us with a more detailed response email. But if for any reason that online application isn't an option for you, you can download the lottery application or request a paper application and submit it to us by email, fax, regular mail, whatever works for you. We encourage you to get your lottery application in early if you're interested in this opportunity. It's fairly brief. Like I said, there's no supporting documentation that you need to submit at this stage, so it shouldn't take you too long to complete. The application deadline is January 21st, so that's coming up in about a month, and the online application will not be accessible anymore after 2 p.m. on that date. So you need to have your application in by 2 o'clock on the 21st of January to be able to be entered into this lottery. You don't need to be a resident of Woburn to apply for this lottery. However, there are going to be several affordable units that will have local preference for residents of Woburn or applicants who work full-time within the town. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but just want to mention that as well. It is expected that the first leases will be available for March 2025. So not too much of a wait after the lottery takes place to sign leases. So for more information on the property, there's a little bit of information on your screen now. So Station 316 Apartments, this is going to be a 425 rental community in Woburn. 64 of those apartments are going to be made available through this application process, and they'll be rented to households with incomes at or below 80% of the area median income for the Woburn-Boston area. So they'll only be made available to households who qualify for this program. The apartments have features such as stainless steel appliances, in-home laundry. There are courtyards with games, picnic areas. There's an outdoor pool, a fitness center, and outdoor workout spaces as well. They have electric vehicle charging as well if you need that. And the tenants will be responsible for paying heat, which is gas cooking, gas hot water, and electricity. Cold water and sewer are included in the rent. And there's also a surface parking space that's available free of charge for residents, 1 per unit. So there's 7 studio apartments that are going to be rented at an affordable rate. That rent will be $2,185. There's also 27 one-bedroom units, affordable units, and those will rent for $2,480. There's one bedroom unit that is mobility accessible, so it's considered a disabled accessible unit. There's 26 two-bedroom affordable units, and those are going to rent for $2,770. Also, one of those 2 bedrooms is mobility accessible. And then there's 4 3-bedroom units that will rent for $3,061. Those affordable rents are set in accordance with they're not set in accordance with an applicant's income or financial circumstances. So what I mean by that is if your income were to change, so say your income either increased or decreased throughout the year, that doesn't mean that your rent will do the same. These rents stay as is. If you have a mobile housing voucher like Section 8 or MRVP, that's separate from this program. And if your rent is lower, your rent share is lower because of that housing voucher, it's just going to be separate from this program. Your rent might increase once per year, but it would never increase in the middle of a lease term. So if you were to sign a lease at Station 316, say for March 1st, 2025, your rent would stay the same until at least March 1st, 2026. The rents for these units are set based off of HUD, so the Federal Housing and Urban Development area median incomes that are released every spring. That's kind of why it can fluctuate throughout the years when rents are recalculated. So we know that there's going to be more interested and eligible applicants for these 64 units. So that's why we need to have a lottery to make sure that the applicants who are applying qualify for this affordable housing program. So I covered some of the logistics here. Does anybody have any questions yet about the basic overview of how to apply or anything like that? I'm going to move on to eligibility criteria. So this is who is eligible for the affordable housing program and in turn for this lottery. So there's four main criteria for qualifying for this program. The first is households have to have qualifying income and assets. So I'll talk more about that, but it's basically your income needs to be at or below 80% of the area median income that I mentioned. The second item to keep in mind for eligibility purposes is that household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So for example, if you're a one-person household or a couple that shares a bedroom, you're generally going to be considered a type 1 household. And you can apply for one of the 2-bedroom units, but larger type 2 and type 3 households will be placed ahead of you and will have priority for that larger 2-bedroom unit. There's a lot more about that in the information packet as well, the household types and how it's broken down by family size. Also, households cannot own a home upon move-in. So if you own a home now, it would need to be sold prior to completing your program certification for this property, which is the step that would take place right before you lease an affordable unit. And then finally, this doesn't come up very often, but households can't have financial interest or be considered a related party. So if you work for the developer, if you work for the leasing office, you might not be eligible for this opportunity or this lottery. So to circle back on the income limits, so income for this program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. And like I said, we don't need verification of your income in order to confirm whether or not you're eligible for the lottery, because you're self-reporting what your income is at this point. But when the leasing office is looking to confirm your income, which they will do later on in the process after you've reserved an apartment, they'll ask for your pay stubs and tax returns and that sort of thing, bank statements. They'll be looking to or try to estimate what your income is for the next 12 months. So that's gross income too. So what you make before taxes, although most of us are not taking home your full salary. So your circumstances might be unique. So if you're working per diem or if you are self-employed, the leasing office might be looking for a profit and loss statement from you, information about your expenses if you're running a business. They might need more pay stubs from you than you thought you would need to submit because your income is sporadic. If your income is not sporadic, then you just need a few pay stubs from you. When you're writing down or when you're indicating on your lottery application what your total household income is, make sure that you're adding up any income coming into the household. So that could be not just wages, but Social Security amounts, unemployment, workman's comp, that sort of thing. There is no minimum income for the affordable housing program. However, as you can see on your screen, there is an approximate minimum income that most management teams, including the team at Station 316, set because they want to be sure that tenants, regardless of whether or not you're renting an affordable or a market rate unit, they want to make sure that you can afford the rent. So the management company has set a minimum household income equivalent to 2 times the monthly rent. And as you can see on the screen here, so if you're looking to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, your household income would need to be at least $59,500. And basically what that means is your income would need to be between $59,500. And if you're a 1-person household, for example, it couldn't be above that maximum income of $91,200. That is a program maximum. So you kind of have to be in between these amounts to be eligible for the affordable housing lottery. If you have a mobile housing voucher like Section 8, like I mentioned, you can disregard the minimum income amounts because they won't apply to your family, because your housing agency is going to be picking up part of the rent for you as part of that voucher agreement. So you can disregard those. But if you don't have a housing voucher, like I said, your income is going to need to be in between that minimum and maximum amounts to qualify. The only exception to that is households that are just below the minimum income amounts. The leasing office might take a look at your assets, your bank accounts, and say, you have a decent amount of liquid assets that you might be able to access to pay the rent. So if that's the case for you, that's why we say that these minimum incomes are approximate. Ultimately, it's going to be the leasing office's decision as to whether or not you meet the minimum income requirements that they require of all tenants, including market rate tenants. There's no asset limit for the affordable rental program. So you might be retired, you might have a significant amount of assets. You're not disqualified from the lottery because of those. If you have any types of assets, we do still need to collect information related to them, so bank statements, that sort of thing. And that's because if any of your assets are generating income, then a portion of that income will be counted towards your total household income. Not the full asset, but a portion if you are earning interest on it. All right, so eligibility criteria, if there's any questions on that, please let me know. This slide here also is just mentioning, there's no asset limit, and all of this verifying information would be requested of you later on in the process. So that would be after you applied for the lottery has been run, you're now in your screenings with the leasing office. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in this opportunity, you want to try to get your application in as early as possible just to get the process started. You can apply for more than one unit size. So if you think you might be interested in both a studio or in a one-bedroom, for example, you should indicate that on your application. There's really not a downside to applying for more than one unit size. There is a potential downside to only applying for one when you think you might be interested in both, and that's because, say, you only applied for a one-bedroom and you would have considered a studio. You're not going to be on the studio waiting list, so you would be potentially behind dozens of other people if you decide later that you might want a studio. So just check however many units that you might be interested in. We're going to review your lottery application and contact you if there's anything missing or if you appear to be over income or under income. You'll be sent a notice from SEB Housing letting you know. If you have any questions on any notices or emails that you receive from us, please make sure to let us know. If you're found to be eligible for the lottery, you get an email from SEB Housing. In addition to that instantaneous email that you got if you filled out the application online, about a week or two later, you'll get an email from SEB Housing with a lottery application number. And that will be in the form of a series of numbers. That's just meant to be an anonymous identifier at this point. It's not a ranking of any sort. So if you were the first person to submit a completed application and were approved for the lottery at Station 316, your lottery application number would be A.001, for example. That email that you receive with your lottery application number is also going to confirm a lot of the information that you input on your lottery application. So it's going to confirm whether or not you reported that you were a resident of Woburn. And, if you indicated that you either live there or work full-time or have a student in Woburn Public Schools, you could be eligible for local preference. And if that was, so you want to make sure that you're reviewing this email extra carefully to make sure that all of the information listed there seems accurate to you. So it's going to have your household type, whether or not you applied for a disabled accessible unit, whether or not you applied for local preference. So just make sure to take a look at that and let us know if anything appears to be incorrect for your household. And then, like I said, if you're found to be ineligible for any reason, please contact us with questions if you're not clear on why that was. The lottery itself will take place on February 12th. It will be in the same format as this information session. So via Zoom. I'll screen share the drawing with you. It will be done online using a website called random.org, and that'll allow for instantaneous results of the drawing. The lottery numbers are basically randomized on the screen, and the results of the drawing are shared with the attendees. You don't need to attend the lottery if you don't want to, or you're not really going to know a whole lot during the lottery itself, because the drawing results still need to be sorted onto the waiting list. So not everyone is applying for for each of the unit sizes. All of that sorting will be done after the lottery drawing. And also the priorities or the preferences that I mentioned. So local priority and whether or not your household needs a disabled accessible unit, all of those results need to be sorted after the fact as well. So every lottery number is drawn during the lottery drawing. Sometimes you think of a lottery and you say, okay, there's 64 units, there's going to be 64 numbers drawn, but that's not the way that these types of lotteries work. So the purpose of this lottery is so that we can establish an order for the waiting list. So in general, it's more beneficial if your number is called early in the lottery, but it may not be the deciding factor as to whether or not you're going to be moving forward as one of the top households on the waiting list. An example of that would be, say a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery and they've applied for a 2-bedroom unit. They're still going to be pretty far down that 2-bedroom waiting list because they are going to be behind all of the type 2 households for the waiting list. So you really don't know where you're going to fall until the numbers are sorted onto the waiting list. And what I try to do is I sort the results that evening or or early in the morning, so that you will have that a follow-up email, or every lottery applicant will have a follow-up email from SEB no later than the next morning. So you have the waiting list in hand after the lottery itself. So when you get that email from us after the lottery, you're going to see if you have a favorable placement on the waiting list, meaning is your number way down the waiting list, so it's going to take a while to get to you if there's still screening applicants at that point, or are you going to be called ahead right away to meet with the leasing office. After the waiting lists are established, the next step is to apply for a lease with the leasing office. So at that point, you'll be doing you'll have about 5 days to get in touch with the leasing office. We'll give you their contact information at that point, and they'll have your contact information. And that's at the point where they'll be doing maybe a credit check, rental history check, background check, that sort of thing. Be aware that most leasing offices screen more households than they have available units. So for example, for this lottery, there's 7 studio affordable units, but they're probably going to screen more than 7 households from the waiting list. And that's often done because leasing units is slowed down by households who maybe applied for this lottery but weren't interested, or maybe they've rented somewhere else since, or maybe they don't qualify. So in order to kind of speed up the process for everyone involved, they do usually screen more households than they have available units. So that's why we always like to remind everyone, even if you're first on the waiting list, you don't want to immediately give notice to a current property owner if you're renting, because you haven't yet been lease approved, and you also still have to go through the income eligibility after being lease approved. If you are lease approved by the leasing office, you'll have first choice at the remaining available affordable apartments. So say you were the first person on the studio waiting list, you will have the first selection of those 7 studio units. So you'll be able to choose, maybe you like the unit that's on the top floor the best, or you want to be close to an elevator, or whatever it might be. You'll have that opportunity. And then the second person on the studio list who's been approved to sign a lease will be able to reserve the next unit, and so on. So after you reserve that unit, you will then need to move on to the program eligibility portion of your screening with the leasing office. So the leasing office at that point will ask for your income information, so pay stubs, tax returns, that sort of thing, and they'll complete your final program eligibility review. Because remember, up until this point, you have only submitted your self-reported income on your lottery application. So you'll be submitting all of your supporting documentation, and the leasing office will work with you in terms of, if you're not able to get all of your documents in at once, they'll let you know what's missing, and so you can get that final application for them. If you're approved, then you will be able to sign the lease and establish that move-in date with the leasing office. So there's a few steps between the lottery and leasing an apartment, but hopefully it's fairly straightforward once you have been in contact with the leasing office. And then once you're leased, you are finished with income screenings until your lease renewal date. So say you signed a lease for March 1st, 2025, you would have to complete a lease renewal or a recertification with the leasing office about 3 or 4 months prior to your lease renewal date, which would be March 1st, 2026. So sometime around this time next year, you would be asked to submit updated income information so they can confirm whether or not you are still eligible for the affordable housing unit. And if your income has increased, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you need to vacate after that first year, because households will still remain eligible for the affordable housing unit as long as the household's income doesn't exceed 140% of the area median income. So to give you an example of that, on one of the final pages of the information packet, all of the renewal maximum income amounts are listed, but to give you an idea, so to qualify for this lottery, a 2-person household would have to have an income below $104,200. That same a household applying for a 2-bedroom unit. That same family can make up to $145,880 at the time of their recertification to remain eligible for that affordable apartment. So there's about a $41,000 increase there. If you get a new job or anything like that, you have more income coming into the household, there is some wiggle room there to remain eligible for the affordable housing apartment. I know I just talked a lot. That was about everything that I wanted to cover in the information packet. If you're watching this after the fact, or even if you attended this session, I encourage you to take a look at that information packet. There's some information there that may be helpful to you, or just as a guide as you're working through the process of applying. Any questions on anything that was covered, or anything about the lottery process that you're not sure on? So the application deadline, like I said, is January 21st. That online application is going to stop working. That link won't work after 2 p.m. on January 21st, so just make sure to get that application in before then. And again, if you have any questions after today, you can email us at info@sdbhousing.com. You can also call us as well. But yeah, please let me know any questions that you have. We're always available to help you through that. And we look forward to getting your application. Yep, so a question here, will there be a way to view this PowerPoint or have the link to it? Sure, I can send it to you. If you want to email, either just give me your email address now or send an email to info@sdbhousing.com. I'll reply with the slides for you. And then, like I said, all of this information, including what's on the slides, is in the information packet that's on our website. Yep, and that information packet is on our website. So if you go to sdbhousing.com, if you go to rental opportunities, there is a page specific to station 316, and you'll see a PDF of the information packet there. And I'll email this to you now. Any other questions? Thanks for joining. And again, I appreciate your attendance, and also will be available for any questions you might have after tonight. Look forward to getting your application. Sure, I'll send the slides here to the two of you who have asked for them. And thanks again. Have a good evening. Happy holidays.